So this is Roger after I recorded that video. I'm not quite sure how long it ended up being. I suggest putting it in double speed or something. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'll try and break it into parts so I can talk about, or I'll put timestamps in the description so you can see what like all the topics I was talking about. If any of them interest you or anything like that, go ahead and just click on those. You can skip the boring parts. It's literally just me rambling about the last 3 years. With that being said, thank you guys so much. If you're here and you clicked on this, I will see you guys later. And yeah. Oh yeah, the whole video's starting now. Hi. It's been a while. If you're stumbling across this video on, I don't know, in 2023, hi, my name is Roger. I used to make YouTube videos on a 10-gallon, 29-gallon, and 65-gallon aquarium that I've had over the years, but I took a huge break to go to school, to get a job, to move, to set this up, and kind of lost my touch with YouTube. I don't know. I feel like back in the day, YouTube was a lot easier. I could just kind of come home every weekend from college and show you, oh wow, look, this coral has a new head, or this coral was brown last week and now it's blue, or whatever. But as quality and standards of YouTube progressed crazily, I just kind of got, I don't know, not bored of it, intimidated, and I didn't really want to do huge format videos with B-roll and putting my face in front of the camera and that kind of stuff. I don't know, it just wasn't my kind of thing, but I've always had the itch to come back to YouTube and do something. And I think I'm just going to kind of wing it. I don't know, maybe just have fun, show things that are new to my aquarium, that I'm happy about, that excite me, that I'm passionate about, that I think other people should hear about. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, hi. This is my innovative marine 60 Nuvo INT. It's the internal model, 75-gallon, but it's not really 75. It's more like 60-ish gallons with that huge false wall taking up a huge amount of space in the tank. I'm going to do a separate video on my review of this tank after having it for 4 years. But anyway, it is lit by I can maybe just pan up, two Ecotech Radion G4s, because the G5s came out like 3 weeks after I set this aquarium up, so that was awesome timing. But I kept the G4s because they're great. I have 2 MP40 quiet drives on either side, and then I have the Vectra M2 underneath in the sump, which I'll talk about in a separate video. I think I want to keep everything on this half of the aquarium for this video. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what's happened since the last video that I put up. I don't even know, I'd have to check. The last video, I think the rocks were still white. I don't even think I had any of these fish, or any coral. I think I barely set it up and just kind of let it go. So I'm going to give you a brief history, the rundown of what happened with this tank. So tank was doing really well for like a year after I set it up. I had dozens of coral. I think at one point I counted it up and there was something like 60-ish. But with COVID, there was a huge demand for salt because people were, of course, panic buying like they did with toilet paper. But they did it with $90 buckets of salt, which I find hilarious. But anyway, it was a hard time to find the bucket of salt. And the salt at the time I was using was the Tropic Marin Pro salt. And I had great luck with it. You know, I didn't have any problems, I should say that, for the whole 5 buckets that I used, right? You can do the math on that, 20-gallon water changes every 2 weeks. I used it for quite a while. after the demand for the salt went up, it was hard to find a bucket. So every time I had to notify me when it comes in stock, all that fun stuff. And finally, I was running really low and there was no buckets, so I decided to get a box of salt. And at the time, Turkey was moving their tropic marin, was moving their production, some of their production to Turkey, and lo and behold, I ended up with a box from Turkey. I did my normal 15 to 20 gallon water changes depending on my mood. It really ends up, I'm probably one of the worst sticklers when it comes to keeping things super consistent, but anywhere from 15 to 20 gallon water changes. After I did one of them, things looked kind of stressed. I woke up the next day, my coral, everyone has that coral that's something's off because that coral looks mad. At the time, it was my red digipora, Montipora digitora. It looked gray. I tested everything. Nothing was weirdly out of whack. So I was like, maybe it's just something off. And the following weekend, I'll do a little bit of a bigger water change. So the next weekend, I did another 20 gallon water change because I'm a huge fan of smaller water changes more frequently versus huge water changes all at once. This will come back to bite me in the butt in a second, but I did another one. And then I noticed some other corals looking a little stressed. LPS closed up. Zoanthids randomly closed up. And I was like, okay, there's something I need to nip in the bud. So I ended up doing a huge water change. The following morning, I woke up to everything except this torch coral here on the left. These two corals here, there's a torch and a hammer behind it. And this group of zoanthids, everything besides those, 5, 6, were bone white. Dead, polyp bailout, just absolutely gone overnight. And I about lost my mind. I straight up gave up, to be honest. This tank sat with those 4 corals in it for upwards of 6 months. Probably longer. Hair algae went nuts. If I have pictures, I'll kind of put them in here to kind of show you what was going on. The hair algae went nuts. I basically let it just go with those 5 things in it. And it's actually interesting to say, looking back now, I had a wall of coralline very similar to this. That 24 hours later, it was bone white. So whatever happened with those 4 or 5 water changes killed everything from zoanthids to SPS to coralline algae. Killed it all. Basically, I'm not going to say overnight, probably within 48 hours, that entire back wall was bone white. And then eventually all flaked off and I had a nice black wall again. So with the hair algae, I kind of just got super depressed with the tank. I kind of started to resent it. I didn't even let my friends really come down here to see it. It was during my 30th birthday, and my tank looked awful. My friend who's never seen the tank wanted to come see it, and I was like, no, not happening. So I kept him out of the basement, funny enough. He's like, I really want to see it. I'm like, no, you don't. I decided randomly one day, I'm like, I spent way too much money, and I love this hobby too much to just let a glass box of algae just run rampant. So I don't know, I posted infrequently on Instagram. You can kind of see some of these pictures. I took all the rock out, threw it in the dumpster, built this aquascape, which I kind of like. It used to be more bonsai-ish, but the fish kept fighting, so I added those 2 extra legs down to touch the sand, so there's some more caves and Mrkleinreef. So a little easier, but anyway, I built this, and I dosed hydrogen peroxide for quite a while to get a lot of the hair algae off of the rock that I did keep, and off the sand and off the pumps and all stuff. Works fantastically. I'm a huge fan of hydrogen peroxide. If it's not in your dipping regimen, add it, because I literally, I'll go into a video on this, but I literally I took this rock out the other day, this whole section out, because I had a little bit of a bubble algae problem. I took it out and doused it in hydrogen peroxide, let it sit for 5 minutes, rinse it in tank water, and put it back in, and everything's fine. Like this, look, that the coral's still bright green. I don't know if you can see, but anyway, took out my hair algae in a matter of days, pretty much, and then I kind of let it go. And everything was great, and it worked wonderfully for another probably 6-7 months. So after that whole reboot, I started to get new corals. You know, my friend sent me some cool coral that I kind of still have. Some of the, I think, actually, no, that was before. The hammers and the torches were all for my friend, but they kind of survived the crash. But I started to order some more from various places. Cherry corals, top shelf, unique are my big three. I love those people, especially unique. Their frag sizes are very deceiving on their site, in a good way, in the best way. But then I started to pay more attention to what my alkalinity was doing. This was probably the last 4 or 5 months is what I'm talking about now. So we're fast forwarding to about 4 to 5 months ago. I was paying a lot more attention to what the alkalinity was doing. And I noticed every time I did a water change, it would climb. Because I was kind of testing, I'm like, what do I need to do with this tank? Because I've been so hands-off for 2 years. I need to start paying attention to it. So I needed to relearn its trends. And I noticed every time I did a water change, or every time every time I would randomly grab the Hannah checker every weekend, it was always 8.9. And I was like, ooh, that's weirdly high for having 2 torch corals, a hammer, and some zoanthids. That seems weirdly high. For a salt that has an alkalinity mixture of 7.5, that seems weirdly high. I forgot to mention this, but after the crash with tropic marin, I immediately switched to Brightwell, which I'm pretty sure stopped the few corals that I had left from dying. So after that super, super, super big water change that I did that killed everything, I switched to Brightwell. So forgot to mention that, sorry. I noticed that salt mixes a 7.5. I'm like, why in the world would my tank be at 8.9? I didn't even have dosing lines connected. I wasn't dosing anything at all. Why would my alkalinity be at 8.8 to 9 point whatever, right? So I was so annoyed at this because I'm like, how? I decided to get a trident. And the trident honestly flooded me with too much data that it took me quite a while to figure out what was going on. So I watched it. I could do a water change and it would drop it down to 8.0. And I would be like, okay, that's right around where the salt mixes within a couple whatever. Maybe it'll just go down a little bit and start to match. No. Within 24 hours, up a whole 0.1. 48 hours, 0.2. Next day, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. It would climb all the way back up. And I would get scared. I'm like, it's climbing so fast, relatively. I need to do a water change to bring it back down. So it would climb up that, what would that be, 1.4 DKH over my normal 2-week water change routine schedule, and I would drop it back down. And the corals and the coralline hated that. It absolutely hated that. So finally, I was talking to Randy Holmes Farley on Reef to Reef. He helped me out through this a little bit. Honestly, he gave me the chemistry explanation, but didn't really give me a solution explanation that was feasible, so I kind of wung it. So basically, this could be a video in itself. Basically what happens is if you have no to minimal nitrates in the aquarium and you somehow add nitrates to an aquarium, like with food or with phytoplankton, that can be lingering leftover fertilizer in the phytoplankton that you're dosing, with literal nitrates, like people dose nitrates, calcium nitrate or sodium nitrate to the aquarium, you can bypass part of the nitrogen cycle that keeps your alkalinity at a net 0. So the first half of your nitrogen cycle, alkalinity, carbonate, calcium carbonate, is consumed. It's in a very small amount. It's a very, very small amount. We're talking 0.1 DKH per 20 parts per million of nitrate. Very, very small amount, right? In the second half, from that nitrate to nitrogen, that same carbonate is released for a net of 0. But if you feed something, if you dose something, and you bypass that first half, and something consumes the nitrate in the aquarium, your alkalinity will go up. Not by much, right? 0.1 per day. That's not a lot. But when nothing is consuming it, because my tank is so unstable and weird, it crept. So I tried all the solutions to try to get it to not climb, and finally I gave up and just let it. I just let it go. And it climbed all the way to 9 and stopped. It did not go any higher. So I was like, okay, what if I just leave it here? So I left it there 3-4 weeks. Everything colored up, like any color that you see. I have a prime lens on right now, so I have a 35mm prime, so I can't zoom in. But any color that you see, that green slimer, that the green anacropora, anything was brown on the acros. So some of the corals are coming back, some of them are a little bit less vibrant, but anything that was an acro or anacro, brown. Those 4 weeks, they colored up, and then my alkalinity just started to go back down. So right now it's sitting at like 8.2, and it actually went all the way down to 7.9, and that's when I added kalkwasser, which will be a separate issue. So here we are now. I feel like I got it figured out. It was a long, 3 years? I went through 2 crashes, basically. I still like this hobby. It's hard. I could make a whole video talking about like dealing with a crash, especially the financial hit that you take when you invest so much. But I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically I just took the time that I needed to recover from the crash. I let it just sit. I let it be. I fed the fish. I did the water changes. I wasn't going to put any more extra time into it until I emotionally recovered. And I think that's where I am right now. I feel like I emotionally recovered enough to share this journey with you guys, and hopefully I can share more in the future about it. I definitely want to make a video talking about that nitrogen out climbing thing, the hydrogen peroxide, and I want to make a video talking about how to deal with crashes and stuff, but there are definitely videos you don't find on YouTube. People don't talk about a lot of their failures with aquariums, and I think that's where there's a huge not miscommunication, but huge misleading factor on like, oh, you can watch these nice tanks, but I bet there's a lot more failures that people don't show you that you could learn from. So I'm hoping that I can talk about these and you can learn from them. But I'm going to try and make some videos for you guys. I want to go over all my equipment and stuff. My fish room, which is on the other side of this wall, that kind of stuff. Going over my fish and some of my coral. But I'm not going to be like a Reef Builders or Bulk Reef Supply or, any of those bigger guys like, I don't know, Reef Geeks and Parker's Reef and all those guys. They're just so much better at this than I am. So I'm just going to have fun making videos when I want. And if you guys really want to see anything in specific, let me know. I'll do my best. You can always follow me on Instagram. I reply to all my DMs there if there's something you want to know more about. You can message me there if you have any videos ideas, especially since it's been 3 years. If you want to know what's up, just let me know. And there goes my trident testing. I can hear that shrill little sound testing. But thank you guys if you've watched this, and thank you guys if you've ever messaged me on Instagram or liked a post or asked when I'm going to post another video. Here it is. Hopefully it was everything you guys dreamed of. I doubt it, because I'm just sitting behind my mic just talking. But yeah, I'm going to try and do more. I'm going to do some stuff going over my equipment and talking about a crash and that kind of stuff. So thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry if this was a really long video, but I'll see you guys in the next one.